Let's give it a couple of seconds. We have no mantra in the background or anything. Anybody apologies? I can technically see my chat. Let's see if something's happening. Apologies if something's happening. It might be happening, but the background's probably not gonna be happening much. Anyway, that's what he said. If I looked at a pebble, the image would rotate interminably in my mind, so I would know its every grain, its every angle. I also saw that language was no more than a conspiracy devised by human beings. If someone spoke, I realized they were only making sounds, and if I was making up the meanings. So I stopped making up meanings, and the sounds became very amusing. I could see patterns spewing out of their mouths. If I kept staring, the person would just disintegrate and turn into a blob of energy. Then all that was left was patterns. If in this state of absolute borderless ignorance, just about anything could hold my attention. My dear father, being a physician, began to think I needed psychiatric evaluation. In his words, this boy is staring unblinkingly at something and all the time. He's lost it. It has always seemed to me odd that the world does not realize the immensity of a state of I do not know. Those who destroy that state with beliefs and assumptions completely miss an enormous possibility, the possibility of knowing. They forget that I do not know is the doorway, the only doorway to seeking and knowing. I would comment on that as a former yogi. But yeah, he's a guy and a yogi. There's been more yogis before. And each one of them had their path. So much for that. So anyway, let's continue possibly if we can see ourselves in the text. To seek the only doorway to seeking and knowing. I do not know. My mother instructed me to pay attention to my teachers, and I did. I paid them the kind of attention they would never have received anywhere else. I had no idea what they were saying, but on those occasions when I attended class, I stared at them, unwavering and intense. For some reason, they did not find that trait particularly endearing. One particular teacher did everything possible to elicit a response from me. But when I remained silent and taciturn, he seized me by the shoulder and shook me violently. Either you're the divine or the devil, he declared. He added, and I think you're the latter. I was not particularly insulted. Until that moment, I had approached everything around me, from a grain of sand to the universe, with a sense of wonder. But there had always been one certainty in this complex web of questions, and that was me. But my teacher's outburst triggered another line of inquiry. Who was I? Human? Divine? Devil? What? I tried to stare at myself to find out. It didn't work. So, closed my eyes and tried to find out. Minutes turned to hours, and I continued to sit eyes closed. When my eyes were open, everything intrigued me. An ant, a leaf, clouds, flowers, darkness, just about anything. But to my amazement, I found that with my eyes closed, there was even more that grabbed my attention: the way the body pulses, the way different organs function, the various channels along which one's inner energy moves, the manner in which the anatomy is aligned. Anatomy is, yeah. No apologies. No time for that. No brain. Apologies. Just possibly apologies in the text. The fact that boundaries are limited to the external world. There was even more that grabbed my attention. The fact that boundaries are limited to the external world. This exercise opened up the entire mechanics of being human before me. Instead of leading me to a simplistic answer that I was this or that, it gradually brought me to a realization that if I were willing, I could be everything. It wasn't about arriving at any conclusions. Even the certainty of me collapsed as a deeper sense of what it is to be a human being started opening up. From knowing myself as an autonomous person, this exercise melted me down. I became a nebulous being. Despite all my wild ways, the one thing I did manage to do, in a strangely disciplined fashion, was my practice of yoga. Started one summer vacation when I was 12. A whole bunch of us cousins met every year in my grandfather's ancestral home. In the backyard there stood an old well over 150 feet deep. While the girls played hide and seek, the regular game played by us boys was to jump into the well and then climb up again. Both jumping down and climbing up were a challenge. If you didn't do it properly, your brains could become a smear on the wall. While you were climbing up, there were no steps. You simply had to clutch at the rock surface and claw yourself up. Your fingernails often bled out of sheer pressure. Just a few of the boys could do this. I was one of them, and I was pretty good at it. One day, a man of over 70 years of age appeared. He watched us for a while. Without a word, he jumped into the well. We thought he was finished. But he climbed out quicker than me. I cast aside my pride and asked him just one question. How? Come, learn yoga, said the old man. I followed him like a puppy, and that's how I became a student of oh dear, we have names, apologies everybody. That's how I became a student of Maladihali Swami, as this old man was known, and got into yoga. In the past, waking me up every morning was a family project. My family would try to make me sit up in bed. I would keel over and fall asleep again, however. My mother would hand me my toothbrush. I would stick it into my mouth and fall asleep. In desperation, she would push me into the bathroom. I would promptly fall asleep again. But 3 months after starting yoga, my body started coming awake at 3:40 every morning. Without any external prompting. And it does that even today. After I woke, my practices would simply happen, no matter where I was and in what situation, without a single day's break. This simple yoga, called Anga Mardana, a system of physical yoga that strengthens sinews and limbs, definitely set me apart in any group of people, physically and mentally. But that's about all, or so I believed. In time, I lost all faith in structured education. It wasn't cynicism. I had enough zest and life in me to keep me involved in everything, but my dominant quality, even at this age, was clarity. I was not actively looking for inconsistencies or loopholes in anything I was taught. I just saw them. I have never looked for anything in my life, I just look. And that is what I am trying to teach people now. If you really want to know spirituality, then look for anything. People think spirituality is about looking for God or truth or the ultimate. The problem is you have already defined what you are looking for. It is not the object of your search that is important. It is the faculty of looking. The ability to simply look without motive is missing in the world today. Everybody is a psychological creature, wanting to assign meaning to everything. Seeking is not about looking for something, it's about enhancing your perception, your very faculty of seeing. After high school, I embarked on a self-study program at the Mysore University Library. I was the first person there in the morning at 9 and the last to be shooed out at 8:30 at night. Between breakfast and dinner, my only sustenance was books. Although Although I was always ravenous, I skipped lunch for a whole year. I read widely from Homer to popular mechanics, Kafka to Kalidasa, Dante to Denis de Menis. I emerged from that 1 year more knowledgeable but with more questions than ever before. My mother's tears compelled me to enroll grudgingly in Mysore University as a student of English literature. Anyway, but I continued to carry the cloud of a billion questions like a dark halo around me all the time. Neither the library nor my professors could dispel it. Once again, I spent most of my time outside the classroom rather than in it. I found that all that was happening in class was the dictation of notes, and I was definitely not planning to be a stenographer. I once asked a lecturer to give me her notes so I could photocopy them. It would save her the trouble of dictation and me the trouble of attending. Finally, I made a deal with all the teachers who were more than happy not to have me in class. On each day of the month, they would mark me present in class. On the last day of the month, the attendance was registered. That day, I would enter and just make sure they were keeping up their end of the bargain. A group of us started meeting under a huge banyan tree on the campus grounds. Someone named it the Banyan Tree Club and the label stuck. The club had a motto: we do it for the fun of it. We would assemble under the tree on our motorcycles and talk for hours on a variety of subjects, from home to make Java motorcycles go faster than they did to how to make the world a better place. Of course, we would never get off our motorcycles at any point. That would have been sacrilege. This guy. Anyway, by the time I was done with the university, I had ridden all over the country. Initially, I traveled South India on my bicycle. Later, I crisscrossed the entire country on my motorcycle. Then it was natural to cross the national borders. But when I reached the India-Nepal frontier, I was told that my motorcycle registration and driving license weren't enough. I needed more papers. After that, it became my dream to somehow earn enough money to travel the world on my motorcycle. It wasn't just wanderlust. The truth is, I was restless. I wanted to know something. I didn't know what, and I didn't know what. And I didn't know where I needed to go to get it. But in my innermost being, I knew I wanted more. I never considered myself particularly impulsive. I was just life-oriented. I measured the consequences of my actions. It is just that the more dangerous they were, the more they attracted me. Someone once told me my guardian angel must be very good and perpetually working overtime. There was always in me a longing to test the border, to cross the edge. What and why were never questions for me. How was the only question. When I look back now, I realized that I never thought about what I wanted to become in life. I only thought about how I wanted to live my life. And I knew that the how could only be determined within me and by me. There was a big boom in poultry farming at the time. I wanted to make some money to finance my desire for unrestrained, purposeless travel, so I got into it. My father said, "What am I going to tell people? That my son is rearing chickens?" But I built my poultry farm, and I built it single-handedly from scratch. The business took off. The profits started rolling in. I devoted 4 hours every morning to the business. The rest of the day was spent reading and writing poetry, swimming in the well, meditating, daydreaming on a huge banyan tree. Success made me adventurous. My father was always lamenting that everyone else's sons had become engineers, industrialists, joined the civil service, or gone to America. And everywhere, everyone I met, my friends, relatives, my old school and college teachers said, "Oh, we thought you would make something out of your life, but you are just wasting it." I took on the challenge. In partnership with a civil engineer friend, I entered the construction business. In 5 years, we became a major construction company, among the leading private contractors in Mysore. My father was incredulous and delighted. I was exuberant and sure-footed, adrenaline-charged and itching for a challenge. When everything you do is a success, you tend to start believing that the planets revolve around you, not the sun. The planets revolve around you, not the sun. Oh, apologies. Revolve around you, not the sun. And that was the kind of young man I was that fateful afternoon of September 1982, when I decided to get on my motorcycle and ride up Chamundi Hill. I had no clue then that my life would never be the same again. Okay, this passage again. Later, when I tried to talk to my friends about what had happened that day up on the mountain, all they could ask was, "Did you drink something? Did you pop something?" They were even more clueless than I was of this new dimension that had suddenly exploded into my life. Even before I had begun to process what it meant, the experience returned. It was a week later. I was sitting at the dinner table with my family. I thought it lasted 2 minutes, but it was 7 hours. I was sitting right there, fully aware, except that the me I knew as myself was not there anymore. Everything else was. And time flipped. I remembered various members of my family tapping me on the shoulder, asking me what happened, urging me to eat my meal. I simply raised my hand and asked them to leave. They were accustomed to my strange ways by then. They left me alone. It was almost 4:15 in the morning when I returned to my normal senses. Yeah. You couldn't have been here before in the book, so the thing that happened is that he climbed up the mountain on his motorcycle before, and he sat on a rock and kind of fallen into a state of enlightenment. He became everything. He became everything. But hey, the experience began to happen more frequently. When it occurred, I neither ate nor slept for hours on end. I simply sat rooted to a single point. On single spot. On one occasion, the experience lasted for up to 13 days. Oh God. I happened to be in a village when it began. This state of overwhelming and indescribable stillness and ecstasy. The villagers gathered around me and stared, whispering to each other. "Oh, he must be in samadhi." Blissful state of being beyond the body, well documented on Indian spiritual traditions. In Indian spiritual traditions, apologies, India being the country it is, there was a traditional understanding of spirituality to which they were heir, that I, with my blue denim wrapped brain, had no clue about. How English Sadhguru brain. Anyway, when I emerged from that state, someone wanted to put a garland around me. Another wanted to touch my feet. It was crazy. I could not believe anyone would want to do this to me. On another day, I was having lunch. I put a morsel of food in my mouth and suddenly it exploded. At that moment, I was able to experience the miraculous alchemy of human digestion, the process by which an external substance, a piece of the planet, was becoming a part of me. We all know this intellectually, that a part of the planet nourishes us, and our bodies, in turn, one day return to nourish the very same earth that once sustained us. But when the knowledge dawned experientially, it altered my fundamental perspective of who I was. My relationship with everything around me, including the planet, went through a dimensional shift. I grew aware of that extraordinary intelligence within each of us that is capable of transforming a piece of bread or an apple into the human body in a single afternoon. Not a small feat. Woohoo. I'm supposed to go and brew potions. Alchemy breaks. Apologies. As I begin consciously touching that intelligence, I want. That's a true shame. It's gonna be 10 in the evening here. And I'm just gonna have my alchemy break number 3. That's bad news. Apologies. We'll be back, I suppose.